Hello and welcome to an episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with Duck. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. Don, a lot of things have happened since our last episode. You sold the bottom, the market went up, came within a pubic hair of the all-time high on BTC, and has now precipitously nuked sub 70k. It's never been more terrifying and over than it is now.
Yeah, I cannot believe it went back to my entry.
I know.
To my exit.
And it's also, we also had a monthly close to talk about. In my technically expert view, this is a catastrophic monthly close because it retested the highest monthly close, blatant range high resistance, and had a hideous close below it on Halloween, which makes it extra cursed by definition.
Oh yeah, that's spooky.
And then on the monthly open, it retested the level, and now it's below it. So I think if we're looking for monthly targets, the first real area of support is 49k, just for like 16K. A week. And then if we start looking at real monthly levels, I think the range low reclaim at 35k. But realistically, if we're spiking the top of the range, the other side of the range is, as you mentioned, 16k.
Ah, yeah, so, we're on the same board, like we're on the same team.
God. Okay, walk me through this monthly time frame. Does it matter? Is the close still significant? Has a cheeky cluster been built as a result of this monthly close that you'd be willing to add? What's changed on this time frame?
Nothing really. I mean, you have to really zoom in to see this, like everything we talked about. Obviously not great. Like could have closed better. But usually I would just ignore something like this. It's not necessarily too much signal. But if you take it as a range, this was perfect range retest, like range high retest, technically speaking.
What, 71.3 or whatever?
Yeah, just the close, basically. We closed back.
So what's the range low, Don, if you're using the monthly FUD argument?
I mean, I'm saying like 71k, like the highest close was the range high, and basically the range low is like 60, 59, 60. That's kind of what we've been sandwiched in between. Anyway, like that's how we've been trading, right? Like if you look on the monthly, it's just been a range. We've tagged 70k like 1, 2, 3, 4 times. We've tagged 60k pretty much every month, actually. So we've kind of been in that range. Don't really think much has changed on the monthly time frame.
Okay, on the monthly. Is part of you here like, does it feel strange making those sorts of arguments so close to the all-time high, like still deferring to basically TA concepts? Because in the past, I remember we've argued that, you know, all-time high isn't necessarily a great resistance level in and of itself. And just like you wouldn't use the all-time low as a support level typically. Not that those are equal, but just in general, those don't tend to be the best anchors and reference points. Is a part of you being like, okay, this TA is so fucking stupid, we're a hair's breadth. Is that an expression? Hair's breadth? Hair's breadth?
Has width.
Has width. I don't know. I don't speak English, but we're basically really close to the all-time high. Is there any part of you that just wants to focus on that and throw everything else away? Or do you think that's dangerous?
I think it's a little bit dangerous, but it's a weird situation because we've never been in this situation before, right? Like usually when crypto stuff goes to all-time high, it just doubles and triples. What we have had here is we made a new high and then just fuck all happened. So I don't know. Like it's a different environment than we're used to.
True.
And I'll just take it very simple. That's why I'm looking at like the high time frames and just don't really let the lower time frames have too much an impact, just because I think we're trading very different than how we used to. And the high time frames usually have a little bit more sticking power. Like that's usually a more concrete signal than the lower time frame. So in times of uncertainty, that's an easier time frame to trade.
So basically, TLDR, back to TA trading, smack it from the range high, matey, range midpoint 65k, range low 60k.
I mean, technically speaking, it's a range, yeah.
Oh, that's disgusting, Don. That's such boring analysis for the massive inflection point TM that we're at. Although this is great for me contextually. I don't know if you saw, I posted a shit post the other day under one of Runner's tweets, basically saying that, oh, well, you know, you might as well not trade in November because it's the election month. And then December, why would you trade? It's like the holiday month. and the yearly close. In January, you got to let the yearly open unfold, right? And then February is Valentine's Day. March is the quarterly close. You don't want to touch that, and so on and so forth.
Very true. Based.
That is kind of catching up, though. Have you noticed the sort of? And I don't think it's like an insane argument where people don't want to be holding positions into the election.
Oh
itself.
yeah, I mean,
do you think that's sensible? Do you think it's absurd?
I mean, it's one of the reasons why I closed, because I think like if you're a big Trump supporter and you think he's 100% gonna win, short term you can keep your longs open. You can just basically be like, because I think if Trump wins, right, and that's kind of how I think generally, like if Trump wins, price will go up in the short term, like as in like that day or that week. I don't think it's gonna maintain for too long, because it's basically like people have been pricing it in for quite a while. If Trump loses, I think we're gonna get a short term, quite considerable nuke on crypto. So depending on what side you are on in that discussion, I think it makes a lot of sense to de-risk if you think there's a chance that Trump loses, and if you think there's no chance that Trump loses, you can just keep your stuff and play around that.
Oh, great! So it's like poly market trading essentially.
Basically, yeah. And I think obviously I generally don't think the outcome of this election is going to have a big impact on like the price action of the next 12 months in crypto. I think this people are just completely overestimating what this is going to have for an impact in crypto. I generally think it's probably going to the US is probably going to be more friendly towards crypto after this election, just because of how much of an impact the crypto bros now have, right? Like there's a lot of money in crypto, and there's a lot of people voting for crypto issues. And I think it's kind of become clear this election cycle that that's actually like an important demographic to pander to. And I don't think there's going to be much of a difference price action wise. Just short term, there's going.
Yeah, I was going to say that surely it's short-term impactful, if anything. I don't know if you saw that chart, which was BTC price overlaid with Trump's poly market odds or something similar.
Yeah.
And again, there are many parts to this trade, but I think a decent chunk of it is getting long into the election on a Trump momentum crypto win.
Yeah.
So it's not insane to think there might be a tad, and that's been going on for a couple of weeks at least.
Yeah.
So it's not insane to think there may have been some de-risking into that, and election jitters essentially interfering. Nonetheless, so the monthly commentary is essentially 71k, even though it's the all-time high, is still technically the top of the range that we've been in this year. So both of those can be true, I'm guessing, from that context. The weekly chart is interesting because that's one you were tweeting about. And it's one of the less insane charts, I feel like, within the course of this long consolidation, although that's not saying much. Your highest close monthly level is also the highest weekly close. I think that's the one I had on my personal chart as well. Yes, highest weekly close. And you had a level at, what was it, 69.6? Was it that one?
Yeah. People say the more accurate level is 69,420, which actually is quite close.
That kind of makes sense, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So anything different on the weekly? Because the monthly argument is TLDR, all-time high proximity is always good, but technically, if you want to be boring and annoying about it, it's the top of the monthly range. So even if it eventually goes to an all-time high, so on and so forth, if anyone's going to get washed out, it'll likely be at the precipice, essentially. And that's kind of what happened, right? We came so close, and that's where the washout took place. Does the weekly reflect that, or is there anything else on the weekly that adds either context or color to this?
I mean, to me, like the 70k resistance is the most important one. We rallied above it. Did like the whole 70k to 73k, and now we nuked. Like intra week we did that, and now we nuked. And I think generally we have to hold 70k, because I was shit talking this 69,420 or 70k resistance, right? Like for the last few weeks, I was like, this is old resistance. It's kind of I think that's gonna break, and it did. But now that we broke to the upside but rejected, I think it's actually very strong resistance if we close below it. So if we close below 70k, I think that is a time frame that actually shifts bearish. The monthly is still bullish, even though it's at range high, like trends up, all that kind of stuff. The monthly is still bullish. The weekly would flip bearish for me, like close below 70K, and we're kind of like trading around 70K right now. That be the first indication that maybe there's some pain to come. And the reason why I take the signal so seriously is because we talked about this just a second ago with the Trump trade, right? I think there's a lot of people that added a bunch of positions betting on Trump. And if the market moves down, I think they're all in danger. So like, I think there's just a bunch of people basically in a position that is not necessarily, hey, I want to own crypto for the sake of it. They want to own crypto because they think it's going to go up because Trump is going to win. And I think that's a dangerous position to be in, especially when I think the odds are like 50-50 or like maybe 55-45 for Trump to win. And when you have a bunch of people on that side of the market, and you have to, and the reason why I'm saying this and why it's pretty clear to me that that's the side that is dominant, is because almost everyone in crypto is Republican, right? And almost everyone in crypto is going to vote Trump. So you're always going to have, like, going into an election like this, that is very much like centered, like there's a lot of chatter about crypto in this election. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to take crypto positions based on who they think wins. So I think there's a lot of people with positions that could easily be flushed out. So I take that signal quite seriously. Like, if we get weakness here, if this weekly fully reverses, closes red, anything like that would be quite a strong signal for like downside. Okay. And I think like it wouldn't necessarily stop in the mid 60s. I think then we might go to the lower 60s, if not into the 50s again.
I mean, if we get to FUD's 60K range low for the 9th time to make it bottom, I'm prepared to fulfill my public duty, Don. Like, no objections here.
I'm down.
Also, two things that are interesting from that. The first is, in your assessment of the election odds being like 50-50, 55-45, obviously that's wrong, and the chances of Trump winning are close to zero because the election is rigged, stolen. The Dominion voting machines are provably, hacked and easy to manipulate. If you click Trump in certain states in the voting machine, it flips and autofills. They're importing voters. The state of Georgia should have never certified. Early voting in Pennsylvania and those mail-in ballots are not to be trusted. What else is there?
Dude, there's infinite cope. Like, if there's one thing, right? And I mean, it's not like it's like Trump is more likely to win, right? But if there's one thing that the Republican side of this election is good at, is it's coping, right? Like, if you lose, it's because of everything that was stacked against you, and if you win, that's just how it is. Like, that's how it always was supposed to be. I find that quite funny. It's just generally like how human, like, it's very human. It's the same in crypto, realistically. Like, when crypto goes up, people are like, oh yeah, it's finally appreciating, like, this is how it should be. And when it goes down, it's price, like, market manipulation. It's always funny to me. It's not how the world is, though, like, in all reality, in my eyes anyway.
Also, as memey as my election integrity statement was, I don't think having voter ID would be the end of the world, personally.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Just turn it into a public holiday and make forms of ID easier to acquire, so those discrimination arguments go out the window, and then that's it. You've bolstered democracy. Probably too simplistic, but I don't think that's an insane proposition, do you?
Yeah.
Clearly on topic, by the way. Technical Roundup, as we rebrand into a politics, lifestyle, philosophy podcast. We're now talking about election integrity in a country that we could never vote in. Actually, we could, right? You just show up and vote since there's no ID.
Let's fly in.
Let's fly in.
Maybe the Democrats are gonna pay for it.
Yeah, they'll put us up in some hotels in New York City.
Yeah. We just need to shoot Harris and an email or tweet, and then
yes, exactly.
No, I 100% agree. Like, it would make a lot of sense to have voter ID and all that kind of stuff. I find it quite funny that the argument, and this is something that the Democrats always do, right? That pisses me off. That's always like when like when something like this comes up, it's always racism, right? And I mean, I'm just like, just no, it's not racism to kind of ask for something like that. If you have a problem, like if it's a systematic problem, then solve that first, right? Like you said, make it easier to kind of get all the documents that you need. But it's not like racism to ask for secure elections too. So I don't know, like on that front, like I find the Democrats are kind of making stupid arguments. On the other side, like this whole the election is stolen, whatever, I find that quite dangerous talk. So yeah, as usual, centrist.
I guess we can decide who to vote for without our IDs when we land, right? Like, get a grassroots vibe check on the ground.
Yeah, see who gives us better gifts.
Yeah, see who gives us better gifts. The other comment I had, which was the audience will be relieved to hear, TA related, just for consistency's sake, I think generally we made pretty good arguments about weekly market structure and how there was, things started shifting much earlier than I guess most people are comfortable with. And also the relative futility of arguing for like an all-time high break for market structure, because at that point you've had market structure shifts from at least as early as 65k and you're waiting for like 70 plus. You're no longer market structure trading, you're like breakout trading.
Yeah, and you got fucked.
and it's not looking so good unless you waited for the weekly close confirmation, TM, in which case you're fine, obviously.
Yeah,
but,
and I think
sorry, go on.
It's the only thing to do, right? Like anyone that bought this intra-week breakout, I think is a little bit silly. I had a bunch of people on Twitter. I had a guy, and I made me laugh. That's why I remember it. He added me, and he was like, "Where are the apologies, DonAlt? Like you fucked everyone over by like saying to sell everything at 68k." And I'm like, these people are tripping. Like one, it didn't.
I mean, they're just hallucinating positions on your behalf, right? That's a pretty popular hobby nowadays.
It's wild, but it's like it's not. It didn't like one. It didn't even move much since like I sold 68. It went to 73. It's back at 70. Like that's pretty much exactly like that's in the ballpark of no movement at all. And two, I never even got close to saying sell everything. That said, if this weekly closes poorly. Nah, I'll not say it. I'll keep it.
I mean, that's a funny conversation because I've had a couple of interesting Twitter experiences because I don't know if you've been following, but Credible Crypto has been like pretty vocal throughout this range consolidation and price action in general. And it's generated a lot of attention. And so people naturally shorten his name to call him Cred. Yeah. And so periodically I'll just browse through Twitter on the For You and it'll be like, oh, Cred is so retarded and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? And thankfully it's for once in my life, it's not about me. But yes, there's an interesting thing in the social media realm.
So washed up, you don't even like they're talking about another Cred now.
I know. My name has been colonized. My username.
I always thought like when he came up because he joined after you, right? Or like at least like he wasn't really popular for the longest time, if anything. Like I know that he was like had a small account, and then he came up, and I was like, you kind of got hijacked there.
Absolutely. Well, it's, deserved. I'm sure. Just washed up. Yes. Sorry. The second point about the weekly time frame, elections aside, is that. The point I was going to make was we sort of caught on to market structure shifts relatively early. I think both to the downside and to the upside. Like I was making that video about market structure on the first retest in like July, saying that there was lower lows. This could be a higher high. Could have been even earlier. It may have been the June leg, but basically in the summer. And then we sort of discussed the higher high roadmap, if you will, when 64K was broken. One thing that's, with that context in mind, your argument is that if 70 basically breaks and if this weekly closes red, etc., then 60K and maybe even sub 60K starts to look vulnerable. Do you think that's incompatible with bullish market structure, or do you think it can still be salvageable and it's just like a deep retest, high low type of thing? So basically, how do you balance, and I think in general in trading this is like a useful question because you get conflicting signals, how do you balance like a dominant market structure with sort of pullbacks within that consolidation?
I mean, I think that would break the market structure.
Sub 60?
Yeah, I mean anything.
I mean, sure, it's a lower low at that point, right?
Yeah, it starts looking just generally worse.
But then how do you trade that? Do you kind of give it a chance? Do you say, okay, well, it's a piece of shit coming off the range high, but weekly market structure has been good, and this is the bailout spot, and if that fails, then it's a piece of shit? Or do you give one... Is there a hierarchy there where one ends up being more important than the other?
I think I just ignore like that time frame basically, and just look on the higher time frame ones. Yeah, like let's say this breaks down, right? Because like it really shouldn't. Like it had all the reasons to go up, and the chart looks like it wants to. And if you then get a breakout that gets stuff, like then you know that there's a bunch of people on the wrong side of the market. So I don't want to jump in early. Like I just want to see them washed out. And then if you get like a big candle, like the one that we had on the 5th of August, right? Like the one that bottomed us. If you get a candle like that again, then I'm down. But that would preferably be into high time frame support or just generally like a lot of leverage like wipe out like that. I would be willing to take. Otherwise, just being like, hey, let me buy like 62, 63K again. I don't necessarily think I would want to do that. And I don't think even 60K or like 58 or something would be too interesting. Like if we start turning down from here.
Okay.
So but I mean, so far we
to the range high then by definition, right?
Yeah, okay, and I mean, so far we haven't, right? Like this is all like it all hinges basically on just getting weakness in the next couple of days, and if we don't scratch all of what I said, and then it would be nice if this thing pushes forward. But right now, like I make everything hinges for me at least on like a bullish weekly close, and like a red candle just really wouldn't do it for me.
Well, there you go. Makes sense. Do you think the all-time high breakout and prey trade is still on the table?
I mean, if you get so if we kind of push up for the rest of the week and then it looks good, I think that's a breakout trade that is better than the one that we had. Basically, you get a weekly close confirmation. I think at that point you can take that trade. If we lose 70 and go down and come back up above 70 again, then the same trade, like the same thing applies. Like that breakout trade might be interesting. So yeah, there are breakout trades there. It just depends.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I don't think the weekly contains much more detail beyond that. Realistically, I think a lot of the market was positioned into and still is for the all-time high breakout trade, and that's not an insane thing to say when you're a few percentage points away. I think as long as you can handle your liquor and leverage, it shouldn't be too terrifying. And only if market structure starts to look wonky, I think then the high time frame view can shift in line with that, right? And that thing is that would take some real moving, I think. Sort of sub 64, sub 60K, like realistically sub 60K for the market structure argument to go out the window. That's quite a long way away. You know, we're much closer to the all-time high than to that thing. So I think in terms of decision tree stuff, the things that make sense would be to either wait for this weakness to be erased and for the all-time high push to look sort of cleansed and round two type of thing, or get like a deeper flush that doesn't entirely nuke market structure and then hope for that to get walked back up. Those two make the most sense to me. I don't know if you think I'm insane.
Yeah, the only reason why I say like, hey, maybe we get like a proper flush and a proper like wipeout, and like even if market structure fails, it might be a bias because of the whole Trump-Harris thing.
Oh, fine.
Like if Harris wins, for example, I think if you get a massive flush into that, that's a good buy.
Well, where is that though? If it's not 60, are you talking like...
Oh, yeah, 52.
Oh, fine. Like wick-ish areas, previous lowest closes?
Yeah, I think that kind of would make sense. Okay. I think that's enough pain for people to completely capitulate. Like that, if the general market stays up, that would be where, like, if Harris wins, that would be where I would try to kind of like catch the knife. If the market generally nukes because the broad market has priced in Trump, then it would be 44. But I don't think that's very likely. And generally, Trump is expected to win, right? So this is just eventualities. Generally, you should assume this is bullish until it's not, until it's proven not to be. It's why I make it so clear that I think just waiting for this weekly close is going to give a lot of a lot of confidence, to me at least, on where this market is going to go. If it's going to be bad, I think it's going to go down. It actually be also a very interesting trade, right? Like if we get a nuke into the election and then Trump gets elected, I think like that would be an interesting kind of like nuke into full reversal play. That then probably also kind of reverses again. Like it's gonna be interesting to trade this. Like if you actually want to actively trade this, because you can just make decision trees right now. Like okay, Trump wins, Harris wins. What do I want to do? What do I expect the market to do?
You can also do it for where price is at that time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's all very like it's all very neat because in any case the market is gonna go short term, and it's quite predictable. Like if Trump wins, there's gonna be short term spike. I think very high likelihood that that's not gonna stick for too long. If Harris wins, there's gonna be a little bit more prolonged move down, I think. That probably ends in a spike because a bunch of people are levered into the Trump win. And I think they would need to be shaken out, and they could easily be shaken out. And then you can just base
that
that
on... model the civil unrest as well, which I think would be quite bearish.
Yeah, I actually think that would be bearish stock. That's why I said like if the market holds up, right?
Sure.
Because if you get like a bunch of like, let's say Harris wins, right? And you get a bunch of Americans just go on the streets, and I mean the Republicans are the ones with the guns, right? And the last time they got upset about Trump losing, it already got quite borderline in what they did, right? You never know what kind of happens next.
A walking tour of the Capitol.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I mean, you don't know like how that's gonna go, and if that goes crazy, I think that'd be bad for markets generally.
Fine. So I love saying shit without saying anything, Don. We're here like this is so telling people to build decision trees and then like not fucking building it for them is so good. It's like a piece of content. And thing is, all roads manage to converge towards my all-time wisdom, which is nothing ever happens, do nothing, which is a fantastic trading approach in my opinion.
I mean, it is. I think you outperform like 90% by doing nothing, to be fair. Like there's only so many, like I think this unironically probably good advice, just because 90% of people that trade lose money. So if you tell people, hey, just don't do anything, you give it like you're doing them a favor. I think it's better than feeding them good trades. If they actually listen. Obviously no one listens, so doesn't really matter. But
that's true.
Yeah.
Not even going to really I mean, I might attempt to summarize it, but TLDR, short term at least, Trump win up, Harris win down. In terms of levels where those become interesting, 70k plus proximity to all-time high, 60k flush, 50-ish extreme flush, worst case scenario if S&P drags and there's unrest and all this other shit. Do you think that's reasonably fair?
It is, yeah.
And you could also just basically say fuck off until the election is done, which I don't think is an insane proposition, as we covered earlier. There we go. Another, episode of the Do Nothing podcast. ETH is...
we didn't even go on the daily because you're like, fuck the daily.
Actually, we spent so long on BTC, but let's take a peek. Let's take a peek at the daily, Don. There's at least a technical level that doesn't suck at 68k.
Yep.
What do you think of that for bias? For short to medium term trading, 66 to 68. Basically, the origin of this most recent leg up.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Below that, it starts looking really, really bad, I think. Just because then the weekly would have to have closed really bad too.
Sure, by definition, right?
Yeah, so you have weekly and daily confluence that, like bearish confluence. And at that point, I'd be afraid that the monthly flips too, right? So you don't want that. 68k has to hold on a closing basis on the daily. If it doesn't, the weekly probably flips, and if the weekly flips, everything's in danger, right? So you don't want that. That's why I'm saying, like, hey, everything looks good and everything has looked good, but you need to be nimble into this. But the funny thing is, like, you could be bailed out if Trump wins, so it's like all of this doesn't really matter.
yeah, exactly. It also seems fair to suggest that the reason it makes sense to have inflection, like, listen, someone could come and quite reasonably argue like doing TA so close to the all-time high is just dumb. You know, you should just assume the shit's going to break and go up, and being too TA oriented so close to the all-time high is just a bad idea. And I have some sympathy for that argument. I think the only reason it makes sense to have something close to here is that by definition, given the way the market's been trading for the last 6 months, if the shit doesn't break out and it's not an all-time high acceleration gate, then you have to basically readjust your assumption for like what this price action is from all-time high acceleration to, hey, this is more likely to be more shitty range-bound price action, right? Like, obviously, the closer it gets to the all-time high, you shift towards, oh shit, we're going for it, you know, where's the breakaway gap? But if that doesn't happen, it's not like you can stay in that mind state forever. Like, you wouldn't be making that argument at 60k that we're about to accelerate through the all-time high. And if you did, it's been a very rough year. So basically, I think there are like two models that make sense at the moment for like BTC trading. One is just the all-time high acceleration breakaway gap and trying to have a position for that. And the other one is that the all-time high is kind of like an arbitrary-ish level contextually, and it's really just the top of the 6-month range. And I think depending on how short-term price action unfolds, you have to be able to switch between those two as new evidence comes in. And obviously, if 66, 68 starts breaking, I think the odds, at least, it's not like a switch, but I'd say the odds shift from all-time high breakaway gap more towards fucking range, we're still here type of thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Cool. Intraday, it's been wild, eh? Like, if you look at the 4 hour, for example,
dude,
even
like
the hour.
The last hour,
the last hour, there's a lot going on. And even some of the bigger traders on Twitter are just basically resigning until election or post-election, which again, I don't think is an insane thing to do. ETH. I think we're ready now, Don.
Dude, it's still in the triangle.
It's still in the triangle. Okay, that's it then. Nothing further.
I mean, it's literally just still in the triangle. It keeps and it respects so well, dude. We made this meme triangle in September, where it had like 2 or 3 touches.
Yes.
And it touched it perfectly 3 more times on the bottom, and it touched it perfectly 3 times at the top. So
I mean, you like me bought every single test.
I mean,
both triangle boundaries and made $1 zillion, right?
Yeah, I shorted the top of the triangle every time, and then I longed the bottom of the triangle every time, and now I'm up like a gajillion% because I did that all with 100x leverage.
Obviously.
I mean, it's just anyone that's holding this must be so fucking frustrated.
Oh man, it's unbelievable.
Like, it's just pain.
I say it's unbelievable, but it's actually very believable because it's been like this forever.
It's been a piece of shit for like months now. Yeah, years actually.
I mean, ETH BTC, and I've actually noticed subtly, Don, that you've been carrying water for this thing periodically. You know, you pop your head out, you give it an old kind of trend line cope, you give it the old monthly support cope, and then it's down another fucking 10% before the next casual Friday, and then we start the show, and here you are again, being like, oh well, you know, technically.
No, I mean, it's in an area. It's still in the exact same area that I find interesting. But I mean, it's not like I have any, right? Like I have, like, it's not like, yeah. So I don't really have a trade on the ETH BTC front. I do, like, I would have a trade on the ETH USD front if I wanted to. Like the triangle is one that I could play, and one that I did play. I closed it, and I mean, I closed it when I closed Bitcoin. Bitcoin I closed at 68. ETH I closed higher than this now, which is just like, that's just a scam, dude. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, ETH continues to underperform Bitcoin. I find it, I don't know, like, I find ETH generally interesting. I think the sentiment is really bad on it, and I think that's probably going to be the play of like next cycle-ish, or like, if anything, like end of this cycle, next cycle, whatever. It's just right now there's not really that much to say about it. Like, ETH BTC keeps bleeding, ETH USD keeps doing like triangle things, but honestly, the way it's behaving, what the fuck happens if this breaks down, right? Like, it's not really trying hard to break out of the triangle to the upside, and I'm just wondering, like, hey, what happens to ETH USD if it breaks down? And I think the answer to it is our famous 1927 or whatever 1937 level that we had.
Is it that weekly scam?
Yeah, that weekly scam.
My God, that was a great level at the time, though.
Dude, yeah, such a good
1934
level.
on Binance Perps.
Yeah.
And it's probably like 1946 on Coinbase or something, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think it was 1937 that we talked about,
yes.
but I could be wrong.
Yeah, that weekly, exactly.
Anyway, like that, maybe that, or like even lower, I don't know. Like that's why I'm like it kind of, ETH really needs Bitcoin to go up, given like there's zero strength on ETH BTC. I do like it still, like for like a later cycle kind of play. It's just if Bitcoin shows weakness and you're holding something that's even weak against Bitcoin, not the best. So
the thing is,
like
even the logic that's supposed to rescue ETH in your example, it still fucks ETH because like it needs BTC to go up, but then it obviously raises the question: why would you want to hold ETH in that case?
No, I think generally, like if Bitcoin goes up from here, right, towards 80, 90, 100K, I think you're gonna see the same kind of play style play out as we've had in the past, which is basically Bitcoin goes up, altcoins suffer, but go up with it in USD terms. And then I think that would be a big rotation into altcoins again. And I think ETH would be one of the main recipients, just because it has the same, like the ETF meme.
Yeah, but isn't that essentially the exact same argument made the entire way up? And now it's just, what makes it different? Is it the fact of an all-time high? Because
no, I just think like with how frothy the market would be. Basically, people would be.
I love how like buying ETH now is considered like peak froth.
I mean,
that's so sad, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I know, but I think basically,
like, hey guys, ETH is strong, careful. Like,
so basically, what we have right now, right? The kind of like how the playbook right now is basically buy a bunch of Bitcoin with like, because you have ETF flows that kind of just make this thing moon, and those people, they're not really interested in anything else but Bitcoin, right? Right now, you have a little bit of like, there's decent flows in ETH actually, but like not the best in comparison to Bitcoin, and there's a lot of ETH. To be fair, right? To be fair to ETH, and the reason why it's traded so shit is because there's been a lot of just overhanging supply, like the whole OneCoin shit, where there's just a shitload of ETH. It's one of the reasons why it went so up last cycle, and like why it went up so much last cycle, and that barely anyone talked about, right? Because there was a bunch of Ponzi schemes on ETH, right? And so there was a bunch of that, and there's a bunch of people took the ETH E-Trade. Like, you have a lot of overhang. And that gets cleared out with every passing day. And I think if Bitcoin goes up enough, you're gonna see like basically the argument shift from, hey, Bitcoin went up because of the ETF, to, okay, what else could we buy that has an ETF? And then you would naturally kind of conclude on ETH,
XRP, and Litecoin.
Yeah, but ETH mainly. Like, that's the one that you have. Like, that's the one that already exists.
Yeah. I don't know, Don. I struggle with that, you know, because all I see is the same argument, just used over and over again. Sort of BTC strength, and therefore the issue is that and therefore has been missing. The rotations have taken place, and the money has expanded during the course of the cycle, obviously, and traveled out, but it's just not being too ETH. You know,
I mean, has it though? Like, when you look at like Bitcoin dominance, or like anything, like any of those metrics, right? Like Bitcoin dominance, right? Like, I hit it in the charts. Like, look at that thing.
Yeah, the thing is up only, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's at 60% now. Like, that's insane. Like, it's almost all the way back to where it was in 2020.
Yeah. What chart are you using for that, by the way? I typed in BTC Dom.
Yeah, BTC.D is the one,
that one.
which
yes.
yeah,
60%.
Yeah, and it's up only mode, right? So it's not really like there's money flowing into crypto. There's money flowing into Bitcoin.
Yes.
And then there's money in memes, but that's the crypto native money anyway, like where people get rugged. And there's a few new people in it for sure. But it's not like there's much money flowing into crypto specifically. It's specifically in Bitcoin. And you've seen this in every single altcoin. It's just on ETH, it's so like noticeable because people, for some weird reason, and we argued about this like years ago, actually. Do you remember this whole argument where it was like, where people would be like, there's Bitcoin and there's ETH and then there's the rest, right?
Yes.
And I was like, why do people keep saying, like, why do people keep mentioning ETH in the Bitcoin group, right? Like,
Sure.
there's Bitcoin, and then there's like there's step down and there's ETH, and then another step down, there's the rest, right? But like people were kind of like putting them on the same level, and I always took issue with that, because it's clearly wrong. Like, ETH is a risky trade in comparison to Bitcoin, and I think that's kind of what people are waking up to now. But in comparison to other altcoins, it's not like ETH has done particularly poorly. It's just people are like, hey, Bitcoin goes up, ETH should be going up too, because for them it's the same level, but it's not. Like, ETH is an altcoin, right? And it's just the least risky altcoin out there. And when you have a bunch of money flowing out of the altcoin sector, which you can see on BTCD, and just generally like looking through the list, ETH is obviously not going to perform so well. So I think the moment you see a bunch of flows going into altcoins, you're going to see ETH do well as well. There might be others that do better, but I think ETH at that point has at least the narrative that, like, hey, you could have like ETH inflows, ETF inflows, all that kind of stuff, which other altcoins don't have. All that to say is ETH is still an altcoin, and I'm surprised that people act surprised when it acts like the entire altcoin sector.
Yeah.
Because
I think
we
people are used
always
to indexing on bull market equals ETH BTC go up, right?
Yeah, but it's not. Like, ETH is basically, and this is what we've been doing, right, on this show for like however long we've been running it. Like, feels like 7 years now, where ETH is just basically like Bitcoin is just generally like the S&P of the market, right? Like, it just moves a bunch. But ETH's kind of like for the altcoins, right? Like, ETH's the guiding light for the altcoins, and Bitcoin is just Bitcoin. And people kind of tend to forget that, like, ETH is in that altcoin sector and not somewhere else. And then it's not surprising when the altcoin sector, when it goes to zero, that ETH does too. But like I said, if you get flows into altcoins again, I think ETH's going to be one of the bigger ones, especially given how sentiment has very much shifted from that whole like Bitcoin and ETH on the same level to Bitcoin and Sol on the same level, and ETH is somewhere completely different. I think at that point people have lost the plot again. That's not how it is. It's just Bitcoin is the king, everything else is trash. But when you have money flowing into altcoins, that's when you kind of get a good ETH trading again, I think, and that might take a while.
I was going to say, to summarize, to people who've been brutalized by holding ETH this cycle relative to most things, Don's answer is wait, it's coming.
I mean, it doesn't have to, no? Like, if we get a full cycle, like, this is like the thing, right? Like, if we get a full cycle of only Bitcoin, which is possible, like, retail is literally, like, poor at this point.
We get, like, a barbell cycle, right, of BTC and memes, basically.
Yeah, basically, like, Bitcoin and then the crypto. Because, like, what people also kind of don't understand with the memes is it's not like everyone in memes, and people on Twitter kind of pretend like that's how it is, but it's not true. Like, the meme thing is just a bunch of people get very rich, and the same amount of people get very poor, right? Like, it's not like there's any big inflows there where it's just like, oh yeah, everyone wins together. Like, that's not how it is. Like, that's very PvP. You take money from other people if you win on the memes.
So there's no wealth effect,
versa.
essentially.
Yes,
and exactly. Also, people might criticize that and say it sounds absurd, and there's always a winner for a loser, etc. But again, I really think that 2017 Poloniex, Bittrex, etc. I don't know who the fuck was losing there, but it was
no, there was no losing. Yeah, and because basically there was money that came in that stuck, right? Like, it still sticks. Like, people still holding like the 2017, 18 XRP bags, whatever. With those kind of memes, like, if that's not the case. And now you could argue, hey, but once these people realize their XRP, whatever, from 2017, isn't that the same thing? And to that, I would argue, like, yes, a lot of this crypto stuff is very Ponzi-like. It's just like, for example, Bitcoin, I think there's very sticky money that's not going to leave, right? Where I don't think Bitcoin ever goes back to like nothing, but most of these memes and most of the altcoins will. So yeah, we could get like just a Bitcoin cycle. Like if retail is just not interested, and then you get like Bitcoin just running, and altcoins generally as a whole don't do so well. The meme coins PvP each other, and some people win, some people loses, and that's it. And then the cycle ends. Possible, I think. Not necessarily the likeliest outcome, I think, but I wouldn't give it too little too little odds. I think people underestimate how likely that would be. I think there's a chance that Bitcoin just runs to 100, 120K, or don't do anything, and then Bitcoin kind of like craters back down again. Wouldn't be surprised. So yeah, I'm not saying wait. I'm saying, I mean, you're trading an altcoin, it's acting like an altcoin. Why are you surprised?
Fine. Your trend line triangle aside, are there any technical saving graces here, or is it just a waiting game there with how it resolves?
Yeah, I think it's a waiting game. Basically, if it breaks down from the triangle, like, oh shit, and if it breaks up, like, I legit think like above 2.7, 2.8K, you get like 3.3 pretty much immediately.
Oh, you're going for a quick volume profile gap fill meme.
Yep.
Okay,
fine. And that would be like a nice little move.
Move. I mean, be gargantuan for ETH. I bet sentiment would flip like 10 million% immediately.
Oh yeah. Like that's the thing with ETH, right? like sentiment flips on 1% moves.
Yeah. And ETH is 0.1% moves.
Yeah, and the problem with that is that like that's a bearish sign, right? You don't want sentiment to flip like that on small moves.
That's
true. You need the sentiment to be bearish on the small moves still, and then you get bigger moves, and then it needs to flip because then you get momentum, right? Like when you have sentiment flip on 0.1 to 1% moves on ETH BTC, that means that, like, I mean, who else is gonna buy if everyone's already euphoric about their ETH? So yeah, ETH's a little bit of a shit spot. Everything, honestly, and this is why I find it so funny.
Before you castigate the whole market.
Yeah, I mean every altcoin kind of looks like ETH does, or like almost every single one besides like the newer ones.
Yes.
Dogecoin's been outperforming, and I think Dogecoin's at this point just a Trump win.
Right.
Like I legit think if you took the Bitcoin trade and because you think Trump is gonna win, I think you're legit like mid curving it so hard because I think the Doge trade is so much more interesting. If Trump wins, I think Dogecoin is gonna do much better than Bitcoin does. And if Trump loses, obviously Dogecoin is gonna do poorly. But I think generally on a risk adjusted kind of, if you look at it, it's just kind of like how much you would make versus how much you lose. The Doge trade is so much better and so much less crowded. That said, you're gonna take big fat L if Trump loses. It's basically like it's a little bit like taking the Bitcoin trade on leverage, but I think it has a little bit more. Like the reward outpaces it so greatly that it's not just leverage, but it's just a better trade.
Well, I mean, DonAlt told me it's going to $1, and I didn't watch his most recent casual Friday before this, but I'm sure he's still long and holding, and it's all fine.
Yeah, I mean, I sold it 0.14 something.
Would you rebuy it? Because that's not the worst cluster now on the daily time frame, just on the TA side.
I mean, if like I really don't feel like trading right now, honestly. Generally, if Trump, like if there's a washout, and if there's a washout before the election, that might be an interesting play, yeah, because like I think that'd be the most interesting play. Like you get like a leverage swipe now going into the election that sets up like a nice kind of like because at that point, like if we go down already, you've taken a lot of risk out of the system. And then you can take the coin flip, the Kamala coin flip, better than you could otherwise. Like it's harder to take that trade at 73K. I think. I don't know why so many people do. I think it's much easier if you've already had the washout, because if you're wrong, at least you're not gonna get completely squeezed out. You're gonna get a little bit squeezed, but less so. So that would be something that I would have found interesting, but right now I really don't feel like trading. Like I'm not gonna trade in the next weeks to maybe months.
So you're post-election at the very, very earliest.
Yeah. I mean, a good friend of mine said, like, why trade in November with the election, and then why trade in December with?
Yeah, I mean, completely valid points, right?
Yeah.
I love it. I do sometimes wonder who the fuck our audience is, right? Because they come
dude,
up and it's like, so Don, what do you think? It's like, I'll just randomly buy and sell based on like my lifestyle factors. And then it's like, okay, Cred, what do you think? It's like, you don't get to find out what I think. And my last trade was in 1986. You know, thanks for watching. By the way, sponsored by an exchange where you trade.
I mean, I don't know. I'm curious too. Like, if this is at all helpful to people, I have no idea. I would hope so.
I think the experience-based stuff is helpful. You know, all the shitstorms we've been through over 7 years and the lessons learned therefrom. I think that part, at least likely, is somewhat resonant. And I think our levels aren't totally washed in the shit. Yeah. Like Monday market levels have been pretty decent, actually, for a change. And Casual Friday, I mean, who the fuck knows? I think people just kind of use it for background noise, if anything.
Yeah.
But I'm
people
sure
are like, oh, these are my friends.
Yeah, these are my friends. We are your friends if you're listening. Thank you for listening. Solana, Don. Solana. Anything there, or are we going to do the whole zoom out? Eyes. It's in a big range type of thing.
I mean, we talked about the big range last week, and then it did range things this week.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, open Sol BTC.
Oh god, here we go. The fucking Sol pair trades.
Dude, I mean, you have to.
Yes.
And then draw a fucking trend line.
Oh god, on the lows?
On the highs.
Oh,
on the highs.
Okay. Well, that shows your bias, doesn't it? You failed the test.
I mean, you can also, like, you can make it into a triangle if you want, if you draw it from the lows and the highs.
Yeah, why not?
But basically, the reason why I'm drawing it from the highs is because I think the Solana trade is quite a simple one. Like, Solana's been the big important move of this cycle, right? Like, that's been where all the action has been, and that's in a downtrend right now on Sol BTC, at least. To me, like, I look at this now, like, this is trending down. It's not the cleanest one, but it's, to me, a downtrend, and I would want that trend line from the highs to be broken, and then I think there's a good reason to be long Sol. But until it does break, I don't really see good. Like, I don't see the point. I think at that point, the Bitcoin trade is more interesting. Even the Dogecoin trade is more interesting. I think the risk is, like, people underestimate the risk on Sol, like they did on ETH. For some reason, like the same story last cycle, right? Where people were like, you cannot go wrong with ETH. Look at ETH now. You clearly could have gone wrong with ETH, and most people did. I think it's the same with Solana, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't have to go down, but there's clearly risk there that people are not kind of accounting for. So you want to be a little bit more defensive when it gives you reason to. It doesn't mean you should be selling your stuff, whatever. But I'm just saying, like, hey, if you want to be max bullish this thing, it has to at least break out against that Bitcoin pair. And then, especially given that Sol USD and Sol BTC are in a ginormous range, both of them. So it doesn't really cost much to give it that much space, right? Be like, hey, it just needs to rally a little bit. And I talked about this trend line, and it's actually been perfect resistance like a couple of times now.
Yeah, it's a decent one. It's diagonal season apparently, Don.
Yeah.
Also, this wouldn't be a technical roundup episode without like a classic fake philosophy bullshit observation, but one that comes to mind based on like recent discussions. I don't know if you agree with this finding, but there's a weird dichotomy going on where on the one hand, a lot of arguments are saying that the all-time high in BTC is literally just the beginning, right? Because retail isn't here yet. Historically, you know, when you've broken BTC all-time highs, if you ignore like the last one, basically, you know, like the 2017 example is the most common one, right? Like that's when stuff really starts to go crazy. And even though it's towards the end of the cycle as a whole, or, you know, you sort of cover a big chunk of it, that's where the crazy returns are made. And it's like this acceleration gate where retail comes back when the all-time high breaks, inflows, altcoins, product market fit, like it's basically this like magical portal, right? That nothing else matters in relative terms pre all-time high, and the order of the wealth effect created by an all-time high break, and just how fucking important it is, and also just how easy the market conditions that follow are. That it's the single most important thing in the world, right? So I'm supposed to believe that, and yet at the same time, often those same people will make a lot of arguments for like being positioned right now, or in the past week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever number of months. And those to me are, those two propositions have at least some friction, if not in being entirely irreconcilable. Because like, which one is it, right? Either this is just entirely noisy bullshit and I shouldn't care until all-time high is broken, because that's when stuff really gets going, or it's not that important and I have to have a position before it takes place. Like to me, there's always just this weird divergence between those 2 points where Narnia lies beyond the all-time high, but I should still be fucking trading this range for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, it looks better for Twitter.
Fine. That's the answer there then.
I think.
And also, it's not like an insane argument. Like, I get it, the all-time high breakaway gap acceleration gate type of thing. Like, I can sympathize with some of its premises. But like, if you truly believe in it, then by definition, you shouldn't really care about the market as it is right now. Because it should be a simple binary. Have we had the all-time high breakout, breakaway gap, etc.? If the answer is no, then by your own standards, you should be like mostly apathetic about this consolidation and like the last 6 months of price action or whatever,
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think your squiggly is like particularly. I think that would be. I don't think it's wildly unrealistic, but it would be crushing in my opinion, like sentiment-wise and positioning-wise.
The breakout into
like a weak all-time high breakout, essentially.
Yeah,
like that. Yeah. I think would not be stomached particularly well.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Wouldn't be the first time. Yeah, dude, all-time highs have just been fucking weird recently, haven't they?
Yeah. It's just
like you look on the monthly, unironically, and I know there's like a bunch of contextual factors there, but unironically, we fucking just SFP'd the all-time high. The 2021 to the 2021 all-time high just got spiked, and then the industry went to zero.
Yeah.
And then on the run that we had from, when that 2021 all-time high got ran, we did it again, right? We closed above it, and then we ranged for 6 months. I mean, it depends what kind of fucking probability theory you subscribe to, if you're like Bayesian or frequentist or whatever the fuck. But like, if anything, these all-time high breakouts have been quite treacherous signals on BTC, which is an insane thing to say. I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, hey, all-time high is no longer like an important bullish thing. It's actually just the best resistance level on the chart. but it hasn't been that type of signal for a while, it feels like.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that. Just weird observations about the sense of FOMO that I think a lot of Twitter commentators are trying to create,
Yeah, I mean, you have to have people buy your bags. So maybe we should do the same, and the market would actually go up.
We need to get some fucking bags first, Don. Then we can get people to buy them. Do you have anything else to comment on either BTC, ETH, all-time high, sentiment, any altcoins, Solana, your personal life?
I mean, everything kind of looks meh on the altcoin front. There's obviously there's always going to be a bunch of memes that do well, and then blah blah blah. But just generally, like the broad market, like the flavor of the month coins, right, or like the flavor of the year coins. Like look at Pepe. Like that's been the one that everyone kept talking about. And I mean, Bitcoin went up the last couple of weeks. Pepe didn't do anything. If anything, like that's bearish price action on that thing. It is at support right now, but it's there for like the second or third time. You look at WIF, and that's just like really struggling. And I think that kind of like it's a little bit more accurate of how the market is. How healthy the market is than Bitcoin is right now. I think it really seems like to me when you look at the difference between like Bitcoin and the rest of the market, that a bunch of people are taking a lot of risk to bet on Trump, and they're not really like obviously that doesn't really translate into altcoins doing well, because if you don't get new altcoin buyers, and if these people are not interested in altcoins, the altcoins just kind of do poorly, and that's kind of what we're going through right now. The space is deflating besides Bitcoin, and it all hinges on Trump getting re-elected And I think that's just like, that's why I'm like, hey, this is just a dangerous spot to be in.
Yeah, okay. I mean, this is great though, right? The TLDR ends up being, yeah, all-time high, it's nice, but like maybe it's resistance in the top of the range. It's been scammy in the past. Also, there's the election, and also there's Christmas, and also there's the yearly open. You know what? just fuck trading.
Yeah, just close the charts, close your eyes. If you're a believer in crypto and you have a bunch of bags, I mean, then just have some balls and just don't look at it.
Yes.
And if you're not, like me, then I mean, just walk away for a while. I think it's probably the best.
I mean, it's fantastic now, especially with this show's composition, because your argument's just like, I have a commune and 15 kids, and my personal life is so amazing, and family values, etc., etc.
Dude, have you had 15 children? Because if you did, you wouldn't say my personal life is so great.
But the thing is, you've got that get out of jail free card where you're like, oh, well, you know, it's just young family, chill life, etc. I also have cope, but it's on the other extreme of being super busy because of breakout shit. So we have this like break glass in case of emergency button, where if no strong views / uncertain / no idea what the fuck is going on, you just pull the family card, and I just pull the breakout card, and that's it. We, you know, clean our hands of this of this nasty business.
Yeah, and then it breaks out. Everyone's calling us retards, which fair enough. I'll take it at this point.
Absolutely deserved. Have you noticed, dude? It's been so funny. Like, you know that shit post I made about, but before one of these pullbacks, it was like, oh, you bull posted, now the market's going down. Here's what you should do. It's funny how real that is. I don't know if you've seen recently. There's been a lot of that type of stuff. Where it's like, oh, just zoom out. It's the you know, fucking BTC price action post halving. My favorite still, and the thing is, once you see this, you can't unsee it. It's the mysterious illness and/or family commitments, like that thing.
Or vacation.
Like those things are just phenomenal. And look, obviously, some people just get caught in unfortunate timing and unfortunate crossfire. Like for you, I know that happened when, you know, around the time of your wedding, you would just like maybe pop into Twitter once and like post a shit post and whatever, kind of get on with planning or the event itself. But that was interpreted as being, you know, as soon as the market is down 0.1%, Don comes back from his Twitter break, which I found personally fucking hilarious. But yeah, dude, it's a weird place.
Yeah. I mean, I get it too. Like, even for the people that kind of use these excuses, even if they're not truthful or not, I kind of understand from the standpoint of like just having a Twitter profile.
Yes.
Like, people have gotten so annoying this cycle. Like, legit. Yeah. Like the audience has never been worse on Twitter, right? Like, YouTube's great. Like, I think we have the best audience on YouTube.
Yes, we do. We love you guys.
But Twitter's so trash.
Yes.
Like, people don't know how to trade, and then they're like, just extrapolate whatever the fuck they want into your actions. They like, no one understands anything that they're actually talking about. And then you talk with like, you have like, your mentions are full of like 50 IQ, like complete morons, right? And I can understand like people being like, okay, fuck this. I'll just say my mom's in the hospital to not have to deal with these retards.
yeah. Which you is have obviously like a spreadsheet of your family members and miscellaneous diseases, and you kind of match them up. You're like, okay, second cousin pneumonia. Yeah, that's the one for this week.
Which I mean is obviously wrong and you shouldn't do, right? But I get where they're coming from.
I get it as well.
Just how stupid
the audience is not great on Twitter, and also people feel so insanely entitled. Well, it's three things: the audience quality is not very good, and the level of discourse isn't very good. Second of all, people just extrapolate, as you mentioned. They make up headcanon about your positions and play some version of like Celebrity Housewives with this guy's short, this guy's long, this guy bear posted, this guy bull posted. Like it's really bizarre, frankly. And the third thing has just fucking escaped me, but it was along those lines. Oh yes, the third thing is people don't realize that they don't have a right to your time, if that makes sense. I know that sounds bizarre to say, but you're not like entitled to know someone's opinions or positioning or trade management or updates at any given time, especially if you're not fucking paying them, right? Like if you're in a paid group and the guy's like, yeah, you'll get updated signals or whatever. I'm sure you remember there was a 2017 influencer who was like, I'll give you What was it? He was like, I'll give you my private mobile number for like emergencies. You can contact me about the market anytime. Just like the fucking funniest thing I've read. Imagine some cunt calling you at 3 a.m. local time asking about some like Cryptopia shitcoin and whether he should sell for like $300. Yeah, for those reasons, I get it, but it is also very entertaining to make fun of those types of setups. Like, I think I might actually publish one of those like excuse spreadsheets and have a section where you have different relatives like cousin, mother, aunt, etc., and then like miscellaneous diseases they might have, and you can just like have infinite permutations of who has what. The fucking least healthy family known to man. This is getting off the rails, Don. Should we wrap?
Yeah, let's wrap.
Okay, so TLDR, elections are volatile. If you get flushes into good levels, they might be worth punting. In some short-term sense, it's a bet on either Trump or Harris or civil unrest type of thing. If you want to play it safe, trade post-election depending on where the market is. For example, it could be an all-time high, then Harris wins, you get a washout into previous highs, right? It could be that the market's a piece of shit, and Trump wins, and that'll be a good bounce to buy a support play and all the permutations that can be derived therefrom.
But all short term. This is all not long term stuff.
So I think in the short term, if you're going to trade, you have to basically monitor the election and be pretty tactical about it, and consider Trump being the short-term pump candidate, Kamala being the short-term dump candidate, and B, where is price relative to those, that impact. So if it's at support and you get like a weak, like a Harris win, that might be a reason to move your bids down or trade the next level. If it looks strong and Trump wins, you might have to chase, and you can kind of build, as you mentioned, a decision tree based off of that. I think that's fucking cumbersome and basically gambling and trying to be very, very smart about it. I'm sure some people have like an election edge and models built around the short-term price action. If you're listening to us, then I mean, you probably don't. No disrespect. I certainly don't.
Yes.
So, if you could always just look, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I've always taken the approach that if you have really strong doubts around short-term factors for volatility, news, what might influence the market, you just fucking actually tune all of it out and go for weekly/daily time frame technicals and just take those as they are, especially weekly. I mean, daily can still be pretty fucking noisy for that stuff, but I think if you're feeling overwhelmed with all these decision trees and variables, and what if it's a contested win, and what if there's civil this, that, etc., like I want to chase the all-time high, I think the best way to remove the noise is just like fresh weekly chart and trade the weekly closes. That's like the, for dummies type of approach, but it's actually quite smart. Cool. That's all then. Don, you sign us off.
I mean, how am I gonna do that? I've never done that, actually.
Give it a go. Putting you on the spot.
I mean, before we call it quits on this one, we need to shout out Boo. I think that's what we do.
That is the
links
name.
are in the description. Those are the ones that are paying us. Links are in the description. Go check them out. Really appreciate their support. And I think that's it. Enough from us. Have a nice weekend, rest of your week, whatever. And we'll see each other next Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.